Hi, I'm Alex, your host, and this is No Code World Radio, in which I travel the world to meet the most interesting people in the no-code space. After Ghent, I head to Amsterdam, where I will spend a few days. And it's the opportunity of a day trip to Leiden, a neighboring city. There I will meet with Vincent, who co-founded the bubble agency Ideable. I had the chance to exchange a few times in the past with his business partner Matt, who is French, and I really like their vision of no-code. So I'm quite excited to get the vision of the other half of the duo. This is episode 2 of season 1 of the No Code World Radio podcast. Hi Vincent, thanks for taking the time to have me here in your office in Leiden. You are the co-founder of the no-code agency Ideable, or formerly known as Ideable. I think you're rebranding right now, so you can tell us a little bit about that later. You're also the creators of the popular bubble framework OpenBuild. So I have a few questions about that. So let's talk about all this. But first, can you please introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. So my name is Vincent. I'm a Dutch, I would say, no-coder. I stumbled across no-code 4 years ago. I would say 5 years ago, 2016. And I think I come from a pretty typical no-code background, meaning that I don't have any particular skill. So no-code is a perfect fit in that regard. Actually, I have a master's degree in journalism. And I had a corporate life before this. And it's more or less the same with my partner, Matt. We were stuck in a corporate environment for, in a previous career, basically. And I was actually responsible for dealing with digital tools in the digital marketing department of a big Fortune 500 company. And I got fed up because of the fact that you're so... you cannot do what you want to do, basically. You're managing a project, and then there's a certain moment, there's a drop-off, and then you have to hand it over to someone else. And I felt I couldn't do what I'd like to do, meaning I couldn't do everything I wanted to do in a project. And then I got in touch with a former colleague of mine, and he was going to build a new system for his company, basically. And he asked me if I could help him with that. So in my spare time, I started to kind of research a little bit, and I found some no-code tools, and one of them was Bubble. And at first, I could not really believe what the promise of Bubble was, that you can actually build a full digital product with just visual development. But it turned out to be actually the case. So I built that platform for them, that system. And from there on, I felt that was actually what I wanted to do. So I quit my job and I went into full freelance mode, which was really tough. I mean, it's not easy if you don't know what you're doing, to make money. So I lost a lot of money in the beginning. But you slowly grow. And then I met Matt. And the moment I met Matt, we started working together and we started to kind of bundle a little bit. And I think we were a bit lucky because we were still at the beginning of Bubble. So Bubble wasn't known. There were a few people that would kind of take it to a more professional level. And we were one of them. And we've been building on the agency ever since. So we're live now, I think, since 2016, 17. We've done over 60 projects, I think, for clients. We're now I would say almost 10 people team, or even more. It depends a little bit how you count the freelancers. We have a core team, and then we have freelancers that work with us. And I mean, I couldn't be more lucky, I would say, because Bubble and no code really changed my life in that regard. I was able to provide not only for my family at a certain point, but I also am able to provide for other people's income, which is a pretty cool feeling, to be able to do that, and to be able to do that without having any background in this, it was basically super extra rewarding.
How did you meet with Matt? Was it like through the community forum, through the community of Bubble? That's really interesting because Matt is French, so I had a chance to interview him, and he also has a very different background, as you say, which is in the end fairly typical in the no-code world. Everyone comes from very various background. He comes from sociology, I think.
Yeah, but he has a PhD in sociology, but he actually has a lot of experience in UX research and UX design, which is really helpful if you want to start a no-code agency. I sent him a message through the forum because I saw him doing the same stuff that I did at that point, and I just sent him a private message one time saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation." and see what you're doing and what I'm doing, and see if we can kind of get projects together. And that went from there to where we are now.
Yeah, that's really awesome that it really led to an agency, as you say, with about 10 people, and also this OpenBuild framework that you're doing.
Yeah.
If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically we have two things. One, so we realized pretty quickly that we needed to have a kind of standardized way of working and building, in order to scale, and in order to kind of scale projects for clients, but also to scale internally with people. And we started building this kind of template, which is basically, at first it was just nothing but a framework that will allow us to kind of build something responsive pretty quickly, because as maybe people know, in Bubble, you can do a lot, but responsive design is pretty complex still, not that straightforward. So we started with that. And that allowed us to kind of create this base template. We call it Open Base, and we start every project with that template. And it's kind of an ongoing thing. It's kind of it's iterated on to make sure that it's kind of up to date. So every project starts with that, and it has all kinds of the building blocks, the main building blocks like user management and log in, log out, sign up, and responsive, create menus. It has all of that. And then on top of that, or next to that, actually, we were developing internally a kind of a tool that allowed us to track a build. That was the initial goal of OpenBuild. It was to kind of create this, when you look at the back of a milk carton and it will show you the ingredients. The goal for OpenBuild was exactly that at first, to have people, to have basically a public facing page, almost like a Git book type stuff, where you could quickly see how the app was built, what type of endpoints there were, who are the collaborators, who is paying for it, and what are the plugins that you're using, what is open, what is not open, what is the complete style sheet. And that was the idea, because we did some thinking initially around, what is it required to take Bubble to, or no code building in Bubble to the next level, was to be also accountable for what you build. So with this, you could showcase that, and you can see, this is what you're building, and you can showcase it to the world, and you can show that you're actually doing things in the right way. We were concerned with building in the right way, making things secure, making things private if they need to be, making sure that there's no leaks, no data breaches and stuff like that. So that was the initial goal. And then we realized no one cared. No one gave anything about anything like that. So we pivoted, and also in the meantime, we started kind of standardizing components ourselves. So UI components mostly. And so we kind of, because we had all the infrastructure, we basically have a sort of a bot collaborator on an app from someone. So we got all that information. But what we then realized is, we had this issue of not being able to build quickly enough with Bubble, because you have to kind of build every little component from scratch. So we had this big library of components, and we thought, let's put that in a library and make that publicly available. So then this new version of OpenBuild kind of was born, which allows you to kind of have it as an extension in your Bubble editor, and then browse. Currently we are almost 2,000 components or something, and you can basically build a complete app layout in just a few minutes. And recently we started adding what we call widgets, meaning that you can have like a full Kanban board, or a review, answer question, everything that kind of requires a little more than just a UI component, something with data. So there's a little bit of an instruction. So add these data types to your app, add these fields in your database, and then copy that element, and you will have an instant working, Kanban board, for example.
It's very interesting, because I guess it allows to go a lot quicker too in terms of building in Bubble. For us initially it was indeed that. It was a way to consolidate everything that we've done in other apps into one place, and use it for ourselves. And then we're like, why not share that? So we have a section that people can use for free. And then we have a paid subscription, because at the end of the day, we're not making money of it, I would say, at this point, because we're not putting enough. We're putting the resources in to make things kind of make it work. But I think there's a lot more potential in terms of education, the way that we use it.
And we're just too busy to cater to that. But it's definitely on our radar for this year to expand the team on that and to make sure that we can build that out more as a full product to build stuff fast and reliably on Bubble.
Well, I think it's very nice that very early you took the chance to make it as a product. And even if there's always more to add, but at least since you're using it yourself, you make it available. And also have a chance to earn a little bit of money, even if just to see. I think doing this allows you to see the real interest. Because when something is free, okay, maybe some people use it, but when you have paid customer, then you see there's even more value. I guess it's, like this thing is...
there's a big potential. I mean, we have, I haven't checked lately, but I think we're now at 4,000 users, maybe between 3 and 4. And even more kind of apps connected to it, and we're doing. I mean, we're making. I would say we make money, but it's not something that I can say let's stop with the agency and let's move completely on OpenBuild because it will pay off. I think it can. I think it can definitely be the case. I mean, Bubble recently reached over 1 million users. If you take just a percentage of that and you can convert them to using your tool, you can easily make that money. But it's risky because you're completely stuck to Bubble, and if
one
Bubble
product or one platform.
Well, mainly the fact that you're on Bubble, because Bubble changes some stuff along the way. Yeah, and if we're not informed, luckily we have good connections with Bubble, the team themselves. So if they give us a heads up if something changes, and we can make changes to our code, because there's a lot of actually some custom code in there to make stuff work. And if something breaks, you're screwed a bit.
But I guess that would be part of the work of maintaining it. But it's you become dependent on the platform, and you always have to do workarounds and.
But it's not proprietary, meaning it's not our own completely. So you're really relying on Bubble to make that work, which is tricky if you want to make that your core business.
I would say it's the same as people who are doing like WordPress themes or plugins or things like that. Because I think Bubble is quite keen on having an ecosystem around it. I think very early they built this template system, the plugin system. And so I think, I don't know, the way I see it is that they have all the reasons to encourage things like OpenBuild, because it helps people using Bubble in a better way. That's the way I see it. But I know what you mean.
They have been.
In terms of being independent. But
and that's the point, right? So they have their own roadmap. And they can tomorrow create something that we did, right? And then say, hey, that's great, but we have now launched our own version of it, for example, right? There's a lot of stuff like that. We have also, for example, we have, we started 2 years ago with a tool called, it's basically, we didn't really have a name for it, but it's a tool that you can check your app with, meaning that you enter your app URL, and then it will show you how vulnerable the app is, meaning if there's access to certain data types in your app, if there's security issues, basically what type of, we show you what pages you have, we show you if there's any API keys that are available just on the front end that we can see, as an effort to help people
more secure,
build more, be more accountable, again, be more accountable for the way they build towards their clients, because it's nice that you can build, and that's something that Bubble does well. They market, anyone can build everything. And security, data security, privacy is not a very sexy topic, right? You're not selling subscriptions with that. But if there's a problem, and there's a lot of problems, and there's a lot of apps and agencies and people building in a very insecure way, if people start complaining about that, it doesn't hurt just them, it hurts Bubble and it hurts the entire ecosystem. True. And so we built that little tool. And at a certain moment, you can see that Bubble is actually pushing a little bit more for, privacy rules and not just having all of the necessary tools to make your app secure, which they have, but also promoting that a bit more. And I think efforts like that will help push Bubble a bit more into the direction of, okay, let's also make sure that we're building in the right way and we're building securely, because a data breach is something pretty impactful, not just on people building, but on the entire ecosystem. People can say, well, Bubble, you see all that information that's publicly available. Bubble is terrible, it's not safe. Whereas that's not the case,
because it's exactly what happens with WordPress. A lot of people think it's not secured, while WordPress itself is being maintained by a very large community. It's open source. It's actually very secure, but there have been problems with plugins, with templates, with people not securing properly their WordPress. And so this gives WordPress a bad name in a way. It's interesting, while it's actually, I think, one of the most secured software in the planet, because it's so used that whenever there is a flaw, something which happens every once in a while, it's extremely fastly corrected.
Which is not the case for Bubble, right? Because Bubble is not open source, and there's a relatively small developer team working on Bubble. Meaning, if there's a problem, then they have to rally all their resources to fix that.
It's true. But I think most of the time, the problems would come from the users. From bad configurations and things like that. But in the end, the effect is the same on the brand. I agree with that. So before we talk a bit more about Bubble, maybe I'd like to know more about the agency. If you can tell us about really how you work as an agency at Ideable. What's your view on this? I mean, like of this business and how you are trying to do it.
Well, I have a lot of conversation with Matt about that, the way we should run the agency or the way we shouldn't run the agency. And we're not so sure yet, to be honest. We're just doing what we think we should do, and we have plans, but it's always a challenge to, on the one hand, have a pipeline with client projects, and on the other hand, have people basically to help you do that and help you execute on that. So I think what we did really well is we scale slowly. So in the beginning of the year, we had a pretty big increase in people joining, and some people stick and some people don't stick. There's always going to be there's always going to be that. But I think what we do really well from the beginning is that we have a process in place, and we have a pretty standardized workflow. The way we work, as I explained, we have OpenBase, we have OpenBuild. We try to standardize a lot, but not be too standard, meaning that we still offer a lot of customization. We still offer a lot of custom development, but it's within a framework that allows us to build still quickly and cost effectively. And that also helps in training people, making people kind of understand the way we work. So we have a pretty rigid assessment in place for people that want to join. And from there, you kind of slowly enter the pool of projects, and you start building projects as part of a team. So you are basically a developer or a designer or both or PM. But usually you kind of specialize in one of those kind of three areas. And you get a project and you start working on it in a pretty sequential basis. So we have, of course, the PM that kind of oversees everything, the UI specialist that really lays out the design, either design fully in Figma and then integrate into Bubble. We actually had a plugin for that, but and actually Bubble now has one too, but in reality that doesn't really work well. There's a lot of disconnect between the way that Figma does that and the way that Bubble kind of translates that. Again, this is why we have OpenBuild, because we have those modules that we know they're very they're responsive, they work well, and then we can build quickly with them. But they're also easily customizable. So if we do something in Figma, we can then really quickly turn that into an actual stuff.
Can you imagine that in Figma you have the same assets that you have in OpenBuild or something like that?
For the most part, we have constraints, meaning then we have sizes, because at this point Bubble is not Flexbox yet, meaning that it's all completely arbitrary, the numbers you pick. So we have layouts, right? We have a certain layout of a full horizontal, full width section, but then we have like split between an M and an M, which is basically 50-50, and then you have an L and an S, which is so we have that model set up, and we have all the components set up, and then we have in Figma we have that as a constraint too. So whenever someone designs in Figma, we have one of our best designers has no idea about Bubble, but he just designs according to the constraints we give him, and then it's up to us, which is nice because he's not aware of the limitations of Bubble. So he designs in a way that he thinks it should be designed, and then it's up to us to make it fit in Bubble, which sometimes is a bit of a challenge, but it also kind of gives you an end result that doesn't necessarily look like a Bubble app, a standard, it it looks like it's well designed. It's not something that, okay, let's try and make it fit into what we already have, but it's the other way around. It's making the UI, UX fit
the needs for the project.
Yeah, and fit and create the UI to accommodate that instead of the other way around. So yeah, that's what we usually start with, and then the developer kind of comes in after or almost at the end of that, and he just starts to kind of wire everything, and then we have QA and you have UAT to test with the client, and so we have a full process in place that help us work in a way that we're not getting stuck somewhere, right? Because client projects are complex and clients are complex, and everyone is different, and everyone has different needs. So to help them kind of along this path, we have a complete kind of workflow. The moment the project starts, we use ClickUp, and we have a full client project ClickUp workspace as a template, and we fire that up, and there's basically lists for the PM, lists for the client, lists for the dev, lists for the UI specialist, and everyone just follows the list. And if you follow the list correctly, then you should have more or less a pretty solid and smooth operation.
Well, one thing that I know, because I had a chance to talk a lot about all this with Matt, is that you really take the time at the beginning of the project to challenge a little bit the project of the client, to really help them with this design thinking approach and things like that, and not just, okay, we're going to execute whatever they ask us. And I think that's very interesting, because for people who are in this industry, we know that the clients don't always know what they want or what they need or what would be the right way to do what they hope to achieve. And I think this is very important. And I sent a few people towards Ideable, and because I knew they needed that, they came to us, okay, how can we do this? And they had very complex ideas, and especially with this notion of MVP, this lean startup approach, people don't know. I think this might be a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you something about that.
We can talk for hours about that, because there's so many interesting parts of that, because it really comes down to also to the psychology of people themselves. And yes, you're right. We try to offer this. We try to be that kind of one-stop shop and be accountable from beginning to end. But it really depends on who you work with, because a lot of clients, you say they don't know what they need. The point is, a lot of them actually do think they know what they need, and sure, that becomes maybe a problem sometimes, because you, with the experience we have, understand that certain things just don't make sense. And sometimes it's just really difficult to convince them that what they are trying to do doesn't make sense. It's not that I don't want to build it, because if you have the money to build something and you're convinced of that, then fine, let's do it. But 9 out of 10 times, that's not going to be helpful in any way, except for you spending money unnecessarily. And it's very difficult for people to understand, or to kind of trust us in giving them that advice. So we take a lot of time. Actually, the time we take to scope properly, meaning so after initial call with a client, we understand your needs. We do an initial project assessment and a proposal, so we can give you an understanding of what it will cost and what you will get for that. But at the same time, we have a lot of concerns too that we want to share, or maybe not, but depending on the project. I'm not going to sell you everything. If I feel that there's a problem, or if I feel that there's going to maybe potentially be a problem, I will address it right in the beginning and tell you, well, I'm not sure about this. You have to be careful about this. Did you think about that? What about this? And a lot of people, they can get cold feet from that and get a bit scary or scared. But I think if you don't do that up front, then you will end up in a situation in the end where, you are not meeting the client's expectations, because those expectations were not realistic in the beginning. So you can scare people away, but I'd rather not do a project than to do a project in the end where, it's a disaster, because it's not gonna satisfy everyone. And it's tough to convince people that they need to scale down, because everyone is convinced that they need feature A, B, and C, and D, and E, and F, right? They need everything. And where we say, well, let's focus on C, or maybe B and C. Let's focus on that first. Let's build that first version of the application. Again, MVP is also a topic that we can talk about for hours because everyone has a different understanding of what an MVP is. I think an MVP in general is changing in terms of what it needs to be. If you build Airbnb 10 years ago, you can basically build a super ugly, super basic website and then start your startup like that. Nowadays, it doesn't even come close to making any impression anywhere with whoever you're building it for. Because that's another thing. Are you building it for a client? Are you building it for an end user? Are you building that for a VC?
To raise money?
Yeah, are you building it to raise money? Who is your actual end user? And sometimes the actual user using the product is not that particular user. Meaning, again, when they talk about, I want to monetize it, I want to have a subscription fee. Yeah, is that really the smart thing to do at this point? Yeah, it will give you maybe some income in the beginning. And yes, it can maybe validate the concept if people actually want to pay for it. But is that smart if you want to raise money? Do you maybe want to keep it open for now and see that as an investment and drive traffic and drive user base and drive a user base and then show an investor that you actually have a lot of adoption? Like maybe that's even more worth while for that MVP for assessing basically or validating the concept. But a lot of people find it hard to it really depends. It depends on the type of client that really values that work. But we really try to be, basically holistic in that approach, saying, okay, we start from ideally we start from a design sprint where we really dig deep into the concept and into the problems and into the pain and the gain and all that stuff that comes with it, and then end up with a scope of work that we as an agency know we can execute on. And I think if we talk a little bit about the value of no code and the value we see as an agency to bring into software development, it is the fact that everyone that works with us, all our PMs, for example, they are also experts in Bubble, meaning they can talk to the client and understand it from a developer perspective. Meaning, again, they can be accountable from the start to the finish, and there's no noise in the handoff between the scope of work and the plan and the blue sky thinking of the project into the actual development process, because the developer also understands what the client wants, because he lives in both worlds. And I think that's a core USP basically from us as an agency. But I think in no code in general, I think that's what definitely no code has a big advantage over traditional code. A lot of disadvantages, but this is one thing that I think we should explore more.
And what would you say are the challenges of building and running a no-code agency?
Money. Well, I mean, I'm proud to be bootstrapped completely. When we started 4 years ago, we had this idea that we needed to make, I don't know, it was like we needed to make 4K a month each gross. If we were able to do that from client projects, meaning 8K as a duo, if we were able to do that, we would be really happy. We're doing a lot more now, but we the road to get there is long, because we have completely bootstrapped, meaning we have no money from outside. Everything we did comes from client projects, and there's a lot more to it than just doing a client project. There's marketing, communication, there's hiring, there's acquisition, there's all kinds of legal stuff, there's branding, there's thought leadership. There's so many aspects to running a successful agency that I could not even believe at first. And when you're still actually with your head in the editor and you're working for a client project, we're not out there selling, right? So especially now that we're rebranding, we are a bit kind of invisible and off the radar, I would say. But still, we have nothing to complain. But I would say that is definitely something that I would want to have some help with people that can help us scale in terms of the marketing communication. We do that, but we don't do that enough. We have a lot of interesting projects that we recently delivered, and we have not been able to showcase that because we just don't have the resources yet to extrapolate that. And it's difficult because you have to do that from the people that built that, right? And they're working. So that's tough. I would love to have like a big bag of money and just hire freely. And at the same time, I wonder if that makes things better, right? Because
Well, maybe after 4 years of doing agency as you did, bootstrapped and growing, organically, or I think maybe now could make sense.
I think so.
But I think, I don't know, but that's my view. But really, as you said, like you're doing something that is new for you as a co-founders, but also, I mean, there's very few no-code agencies, and especially back in 2016, 17, when you started, there was nothing. So there's not even one person who could advise you. Maybe some people who created traditional agencies, but no-code agencies, I think, face also different challenges. And we can talk about like the workforce and all this is also quite a challenge. But I think this is interesting. I mean, we see now agencies being created, raising money and going very fast, but they don't have the experience. And I don't know, I'm curious to see, we'll see what happens, but I don't know. I'm a fan in general of bootstrapping. And especially I think when you do an agency, that's how you learn at the same time as you build. And I don't know. I think it's.
Yeah, I agree. Well, of course, I agree because we follow the path, and I don't like to take foreign money. I like to kind of be able to say that that I'm sustaining a group of people in their daily life by just working hard and getting to where we feel we needed to go without taking any outside help, which is maybe sometimes stupid too, because it can make your life easier, and it can also mean that you can grow faster if you take money. But for me, it was also, there's also risk involved. You never know what's going to happen. At this point, we're pretty, secure and safe, but you never know, right? There's always something in the back of your mind saying that, be careful, because before you know it, things are, it can never last, it's never too good to be true. And at the same time, we've been doubling turnover year after year. So there's no reason to believe that we're not going to survive and grow. However, what you said, I think, being bootstrapped and having the experience that we have also makes us see things a bit different, because when you're coming into the game, so to speak, now, you maybe have some ideas about what it means to build with no code, about it's faster, it's cheaper, meaning, okay, we have to build super fast, we have to build super simple, we have to build MVPs, we have to, there's a lot of what's the word? Concept. There's a lot of things that you think no code means. And if you work longer in no code, you understand that what are actually the differences between traditional code and coding. Because traditional code, again, we were discussing that before. They're not sitting still. There's a lot of developments going on there, and things are moving rapidly in that space too. And there's going to be maybe a time where there's a convergence, or it's going to be less clear what it means to do no or low code and full code. So for me, I think it's important to have a process and to be able to connect that maybe with a philosophy of building stuff and have a successful project like that. Whereas if you come into the industry now and you have a big bag of money, I would say the only thing you can do is buy expertise. You buy you buy expertise from people that already are in that space for a while, because it is significantly different from running a traditional code shop, or maybe not, but that's a choice then. And for us, the choice was to do no code in a way that we extract the most benefits from it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is an opportunity to do things differently than the traditional agencies. Maybe you could do the same, but would that make sense? I mean, there is opportunity because of the things of the proprietary, the things with the no-code tools that would help do things differently. So exactly, and it's not easy to figure that out when you're just kind of focused on the notion of like these superficial ideas of what no code means, meaning that it's fast and cheap. I would say it's even like it's almost a stigma, for instance, for Bubble, that you can't build for production with Bubble, And I think, to be honest, I think it was true for a while. I don't think it is anymore, except if you're building Airbnb and you have something And it's not even the features. I would say it's the traction, the audience. This is like the performance side of it.
Sure.
But I think you can really build things that can go in production and have significant business around it. And there are some examples.
We have plenty of...
It's hard to change that.
We have plenty of examples of businesses that run fully on products that we build. But as you said, there's a sweet spot of a type of product that works well. Airbnb or a niche marketplace or something along those lines can work really well to a certain point. If there's a lot of traction of your product, that's great. Meaning then you put out an MVP at really a low cost. You were able to iterate on that really fast, which again is another promise of no code. And then you hit certain performance issues, but that's normal. The only problem in Bubble, I feel, is that Bubble is still a bit unclear about scaling. I mean, you can build something really efficiently and build for scaling, but then actually scaling through adding server capacity and stuff like that, that's not necessarily very transparent with Bubble.
I would say it's hard to anticipate now the scaling in terms of, like, you don't know exactly, you can't really easily measure that, okay, in 2 weeks, if we keep this growth, we will reach the capacity and things like that. While this is not easy also in traditional development, and DevOps and all those things are also quite an expertise to have. Scaling is very hard to achieve in any case. But I think in Bubble, since you don't manage directly the hosting and the software itself, then you can't really anticipate.
No, that's true. But it's, as you said, it's less and less an issue. But it's still an issue.
And it's also a rich person problem, I would say.
Well, I mean, if you're at that point, you did well. Meaning you are one of the lucky few that have a successfully validated concept. Because again, for most of that type of stuff, most of those types of applications, people that come to you with an idea of building a marketplace or building something that they want to monetize directly, if you come to the point where you need to think about scaling, you're doing a good job. You are one of the very few that have managed to make a successful MVP. And from there, you can go wherever you want. Because the point with a lot of people that come to us and are questioning, and we have that in the beginning, we had a big issue with selling Bubble because people were like, I'm stuck to Bubble. I cannot export my code base. I have a vendor lock-in. I don't know what if Bubble goes down? What if Bubble stops? So we had to really fight hard to get those clients. Whereas now we don't have those conversations anymore. It's very rare that we have those conversations. The conversation we have that are like that are with basically advisors to people that come from a traditional code and background, and they are advising maybe a startup or someone and that is venturing into no code, and they have those questions and concerns. But as a counter argument, I would say that, again, and I am no expert in traditional development, but from what I know is that a lot of agencies, traditional software agencies, they work vastly different from each other. They use different stacks, they use different frameworks, they use different templates that they built themselves, that they use to build stuff. Meaning, if you come with your code base from externally and you come to a traditional dev shop and say, "Hey, this is my app. Can you move it? Can you take this?" They will most likely rebuild that or vastly rebuild big parts of that. Meaning, it's not like you have your code base and you can move it anywhere you want and anyone can pick that up and move and iterate on it. And in that sense, I would say having your MVP or V1 or even V2 through 3 on Bubble, if you have a validated concept, this is the best scope of work that you can deliver to an agency, because it will show them right away how things work, what worked and what doesn't work, how everything is structured. And then it's about replicating that. And in terms of export, data export, API connectivity, that's not an issue. It's not an issue to get your data out. The only issue is that the code base that you can export is proprietary to Bubble, so you cannot use it anywhere else. But I don't necessarily see that as a problem.
Yeah, no, you it's really right that you mentioned the vendor lock-in, and the thing is that it definitely exists in the traditional industry, I used to run an agency, and we did at the beginning because we had to take pretty much everything that came in, but then eventually we would never modify or iterate on a code base of someone else, except if it was made by an exceptionally good agency on technologies that we already knew. Let's say they were using, I don't know, React, for instance, in the right way, because there's a lot of people who do React very badly, and and the code is not documented and all this. So yeah, no, it's a very good counter argument. And I also like when you said there is a bit of a hard truth also about projects. Most projects won't get to the scaling point. And I know that people who have projects and ideas and they're very optimistic about it when I talk to them. And you don't want to tell them, okay, there's very little chance that you will get to these problems, but it's the hard truth, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then fail fast. That's a promise of no code too.
Definitely.
Because you spend money, but not too much. But at least you know pretty quickly if stuff works or not. Plus, again, the point with building a product, no code doesn't matter. I would say still 80% of your budget should go to marketing communication.
It's true.
There's only a very limited amount of that budget you should allocate to actually building your product. If you want to be successful, you need to be really loud. You need to be really everywhere. You need to sell, and then get traction. Of course, you need to have a product that works and it needs to be solid. But the big problem is marketing communication.
The product needs to deliver value, hence the MVP philosophy.
Oh, apparently not always. I see some stuff that I'm like, why is this so popular? Why are people using this? And what is the magic here? And then there's no magic. They're just everywhere. They're just in your feed all the time.
It's true.
And they get early traction right enough to the point where there's a bigger fish thinking, let me take that. And they give you some money, and then that's a successful acquisition.
That's true. That's one path.
That's one path. Yeah. But it's a very popular one, right?
Yeah. But if I want to extend just what you're saying when you talk about the budget, if we're in one approach that's different of this discussion of people building themselves using no code and not going through an agency, I still think that 80% of the time, not the budget necessarily, but should go to marketing and acquisition and all this. And sometimes people are too focused on, choosing the right tool, using the tool, building, and some people get very excited with Bubble and with other tools and Ideable and all this because they're very fun to use. I mean, when you get into it. But some people get into that and they forget that if they are, especially for solo founders, there's so much more to do, as you said, than building the product. Yeah, it's also good to say that.
Yeah, the promise of no code is that you lose sleep. I mean, it's so easy to kind of get completely lost in the tool, whether that's Bubble or Ideable or Glide or whatever. I would say Bubble more because there's more depth to it. There's way more customization available. Yeah. But this is, I mean, we see that a lot too. There's this fear of launching because you feel that you're not ready yet, and before you know it, without even launching, you build a monster. You build this big app that does everything, and at the same time, it doesn't do anything because no one knows what it does anymore, right? Because it's been your baby, and you're the master of your baby. But other than that, everyone is like, yeah, that's amazing, but I don't understand what you're doing or what it's going to be, how you're going to monetize it.
No.
But that is a good thing, because that's exactly what people need to do. They need to jump in and start learning and playing and get experience.
True.
And fail.
Then you build another project.
Exactly.
Or you build for other people. That's one of the things I like also with Bubble. When you train to use Bubble to build your project, most likely you will fail, as we say. It's the hard truth. But then you have skills. Yeah. And then those skills, you can maybe work for an agency, maybe you can help other people building, and then you can still make some money. So you haven't lost your time. Maybe you failed your project, but you have learned in the way. So I think this is very important. Well, thanks for all this. It's super, super interesting. While I'm with you, I just want to take the chance also to ask you a little bit about the local no-code community. So I would say in the Netherlands, here in Leiden, in Amsterdam, or I don't know exactly how it works, but what can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so I'm in Leiden. I have an office here in the what they call Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. It's a joint venture between local like schools and universities and business basically. So they're connecting, and there's a lot of startups that are here, and there's also a lot of students. But I did a workshop some time ago about no code and Bubble specifically, where we did we just talked a little bit about what is no code exactly, and what we feel is no code, and we did a little exercise in Bubble. But I have to say that still, I would say you in France are spoiled in terms of the community, because I think that there's very little community here still, or maybe I'm not too familiar with it, but I am in a couple of Slack groups, but it's very quiet there. Everyone is doing their own thing. There's nothing like contournement or in here, and people don't know. They have no clue what is no code. What I mean, I would say no code as a concept is a very difficult one to explain, because people, again, like MVP, people have different meaning about what is no code. People think that maybe Excel is no code. There's a big debate about what tool is actually no code.
Is Notion no code?
Is Notion no code? Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm not sure if I have a correct definition, but I think for us, being able to build proprietary software, a digital product that is that is fully yours. You build something completely new and unique, a proprietary product, using a no-code tool. For me, that's a no-code tool. I don't think you can build that using Excel and even Notion. I would say Notion is that's a tough one. Airtable, for us, Airtable is a tool that we use to build products that are built on no-code, right? So we connect that with each other. But for me, Bubble as a stack is really the no-code tool, or Ideable, or even Glide to an extent, because you can still build a professional product, which is a kind of a proprietary product on Glide or Ideable, or you name them. But I think something like Bubble or Betty Blocks, or you have new ones like I think Ycode, AppGyver, those types of platforms. For me, those are in that realm. But people don't really understand.
No, it's interesting because your vision of no code is quite oriented towards building products, which is fine. I think it's
we are very narrow-minded with that in that regard. I understand that too. Yeah, that's a question I should ask actually to every guest. What is no code?
Yeah, what is no code to you? But because for me there is this product vision, but I also like the internal tools vision.
Yeah.
But I would say my definition of no code is being able to do things that used to be only available for programmers and developers without being able to code. And for that, for instance, Airtable, the fact that you're able to manage a relational database very easily and visually qualifies, for something that previously was only available for programmers and people who are aware of, what a database is.
Even though Excel kind of had that already.
And Excel kind of have that.
Which is then the debate is Excel no code, because in a way you have these scripts that you can write, so it's a bit codey.
So this is like low code approach, but I would qualify as Excel as like one of the ancestors of
ancestors of no code.
Yeah, exactly. Before it was called no code, but I'm very happy with any definition, because I think that's why I like to qualify no code as a movement more than anything else, and it's a spirit of building things. There's a lot of lean startup in it. There's a lot of indie maker in it. There's a bit of entrepreneurship. There's digital nomads. We can mix a lot of philosophies kind of into it, and then
there's a full identity to derive from being a no coder. Even though I don't. I am one, but I don't really see myself as one. Also because as you to come back to your question, people here, even here, where you are in the epicenter of startups, and I mean in Leiden then. People have no real clue yet exactly what I do, for example, what we do as a company, what no code actually is, what you can and cannot do with it. So there's still a lot of education. It really makes me realize that we were in early, and I feel now almost that we are at the end of, I don't know, the no code hype or this idea.
Really?
Sometimes I can feel that, even though
interesting.
then you talk to people and you're like, oh yeah, there's still so many unknowns.
Yeah.
There's so many people that still have no clue, and there's still so much more to gain.
I think we are at the end of the pioneering phase,
Yeah.
And it's like, I think we are the pioneer, and even more you maybe than me, because I arrived maybe a couple years later than you. But I think it's, it's so, for us, it's already the end of the hype. But when you zoom out, no one knows about no code really, and I talk no code all day, so I just think of that. But in the end, I think
we already are way too deep in the rabbit hole to be able to look back and see how deep
we anymore. But no, it's true. But I really think, in 10 years, hopefully we'll have a chat like this, and we will think about this moment and say, I think that was really just the beginning, and hopefully this is the beginning of a way bigger movement, because I think this whole no-code thing should be for everyone, while code and all this was just for a few that kind of want to keep it for themselves. And I say that I'm a programmer originally, so I think I can say that. But yeah, a lot of things about no-code is about sharing, I think. And we're just at the beginning of this sharing phase, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Just to finish, I'm just curious to know a little bit more about Leiden. If you can tell us, I don't know, for people who would come.
The tourist guide to Leiden?
Yeah, a little bit. Just because you're not from here originally, but you came here for the study.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been here since 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of know my way around Leiden. We actually live in a kind of adjacent town. But Leiden is it's a student city. So we have Leiden University, which is one of the bigger ones in the country, the oldest one, I think even, or maybe the second oldest one. So it's really a student city. There's a lot of students here. There's a lot of, little cafes and some places where if you can look well, cheap beer and stuff. Plus it's really old and historic. So there's a lot of nice historical sites. The city center is really beautiful. This is the place where the Pilgrims left to the US when they moved on the Mayflower, and there's it's the oldest house in Leiden. I think it's from 1300, and it's now a museum now for the.
Go have a look at that.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's like a mini Amsterdam, I would say, without all the tourists and all the mess. So it's a really nice town. Yeah, for sure. If you're in the area, I would. It's definitely something worth visiting or kind of go by. And
it's very close to Amsterdam. I mean, it took me, let's say, about half an hour to come.
Yeah.
But so we're closer to The Hague. I don't know how you pronounce that. Yeah.
And you're close to the sea too. It's 20 minutes to the sea, which is, we have nice sandy beaches. So not always warm and not always sunny, but especially now it's a bit tough.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Last few weeks, but if the weather's nice, it's a great bike ride to there.
Okay. And what about like the tech scene? You were saying like there's a lot of things happening also.
Yeah, there's we have the Bioscience Park, which is so for example Johnson & Johnson, which is in the Netherlands, it's Janssen Pharmaceuticals. They developed the vaccine, the Johnson vaccine here in Leiden, for example. So there's a really big tech hub, really bio-related. I actually worked for one of the companies there in my previous job, and it's growing a lot. So it's connected to the university. There's a lot of companies there, and stuff like this is really meant to set up connections between students and those big companies. Yeah. So there's a lot of companies here, small startups that work on a very specific. Usually, in a lot of cases, bio. I don't even know what they're doing, honestly. Yeah, but they're building stuff for tests in the medical area. They're doing medicine development. They're doing all kinds of stuff around pharma. And there's a lot of that in the in this bioscience park. So it's a bit of a tech hub, and then we have. ESA in Noordwijk, which is pretty close. A lot of expats here are from the European Space Agency there.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty technical area. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting because yesterday I was in Ghent, where I recorded the first episode of this podcast, and there's so many similarities actually with same. It's a student city. It's I don't know. It's interesting. There's I don't know. It's kind of random, but there's a path to these smaller towns that are still exciting and lively, and maybe because they are the universities, but also the people working in the tech industry, and this usually makes a good mix. Plus, as you say, I mean, I don't know Leiden, but I will go have a little walk afterwards. But also older city. I mean, Ghent is also a very old city and very exciting. So.
And how was your no-code experience there? Does it
the people, Mary and Philip from Tally, were very, very nice and super interesting. So you will have to listen to the podcast when it's out.
I will.
But also the local no-code scene is not really existent, and so everything is to be.
It's a very remote scene, right? It's everyone is online. Everyone is in their own,
And I think that what's interesting is about Belgium is that half is kind of French. So a lot of Belgian people in the no-code scene, are part of our French no-code community. But then the other half, like the Flemish part, everyone speaks English perfectly over there. And so do they need a local Flemish scene, kind of? The same way you would need a Dutch scene, where I guess everyone is just part of the more global, like English-speaking communities, because here I think it's the same. Everyone speaks perfect English. So
I think that's a big factor into why, for example, France is such a big community on its own when it comes to no-code and Bubble. I think in terms of Bubble users, I think France is one of the, after America, one of the biggest use base, and maybe in no-code in general. And there's a lot of the fact that there's a lot of boot camps and courses completely in French and tailored to the French market. I'm not sure that would work here, to be honest. Maybe there is. I'm sure there is room for that, but it's definitely a lot less.
Smaller market.
Yeah, there's for sure, and people are looking at stuff in English anyway. So
that's interesting, because that's one of the things I want to see also during my trip. It's kind of like the opportunities of local. Like classes, like for instance the classes we do, but in local language. But I feel like in Dutch or
Germany may be something.
Germany, I'm pretty convinced that Spain, Italy, it's kind of the same that France. Like English there, it's kind of weak. But Germany maybe is a big market, and there's probably room for classes in German. I don't know. Maybe they already exist. That's what I will see next week.
Yeah. It's funny that it's. You're still a bit in an island, right? Because what you do in France, and the French scene. I know the French scene very well because of my partner, and because of I am in contact with you guys way better than I know the Dutch scene. But maybe indeed there is not a lot going on. Who knows? I don't know.
Maybe there is. I will be very happy that there is like a big like German community. Like one of my dreams is kind of a federation, of no-code communities and. European or maybe even international, but I think we're a bit far from that yet. But we'll see. I don't know.
But would that be more product orientated using no code, or would it be more platform orientated? Like again, no code as a community, it's a very fluid concept, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think there is room for both, because there are bridges also. Like we see on our Slack, I think the Bubble channel is the biggest. Then the Webflow channel is the biggest. And then, I don't know, there's Airtable, Zapier, and all this.
Yeah.
But then people who are big on Bubble, sometimes they will go ask a question on Airtable, because maybe for one project they're using Airtable, so there are also some bridges like that. And I think we didn't really discuss that, but I really believe that there's also a big usage of Bubble to build internal tools, and not just like public-facing tools or platforms or marketplaces and things like that. I don't know if you do a lot of that.
We do a lot of that, and that's we didn't expand on that conversation about what is a good project to do in Bubble. Your MVP, your V1, your marketplace, yes, but for the most part, internal tools are a really interesting avenue to take as a company, because you can take ownership. Because it's easier to champion someone within your own organization to take ownership of your own product. And actually, we have a lot of conversations and discussions about the concept of build and buy. Are you at a point where you start to think about buying a software to kind of cater your needs? Or are you going to invest in building your own? And yeah, we see a lot of companies that come to us because they feel that they need to build their own. Again, that has a lot of ifs and buts to it, because when you build your own, you are the one responsible for that piece of technology. Meaning, yes, we are too, because we build it for you or we build it with you. But if something breaks, yeah, that's on you, right? You cannot complain to your vendor and say, hey, this doesn't work anymore. Why? So yeah, there's a lot of issues. Well, there's not issues, but there's a lot of challenges to overcome. Meaning, in our experience, the best thing to do, or the best area to work in is or do a no-code project would be to that for a process that does not touch your core vertical kind of your core existence. Basically, it's something that kind of contributes to that or help with that, or something kind of connected to it, but it's not touching your core stuff. That's kind of the sweet spot for stuff like this. One really good example, I'm not sure we have a lot of time for that, but a project we did in France for the municipality of Grenoble, where they are doing these water measurements, like a department. And they did all of that by hand, meaning they had a sheet of paper. They pick up the sheet of paper at the office. They have their list of places to go and measure the water quality or whatever that exactly is. It's data entry. They move back to the office and they put that back into the manager's on the manager's desk. They take it, they put it all in Excel, and then they record that data. So there's a lot of automation to do to make
digital
to make that better, and this is the digital transformation stuff which everyone talks about, but this is a really tangible example of how
the real way
this can make people's life actually easier, because now they're not, what we build is a PWA, a progressive web app that also allows you to, in Bubble, that also allows you to record stuff offline, meaning that they're sometimes in a bit of a remote location doing measurements. They can still record that on their device. Whenever internet comes back, it gets uploaded into the database, and then they don't have to go after work. They don't have to go back to the office and hand over their paper. They can go home to their family. And to me, and the adoption in that project is amazing. It's a very successful project, and everyone is really happy with the way that it turned out. But for me, that's an extremely good example of a success story of building something with no code. First, we did a small validation on Glide, just to showcase and prototype something to them. So this is something that could work. Then you start really doing the scope with them, and then you get all these features that needs to be added to it. So there's always scope creep. But in the end, I think we were able to kind of guard the core concept really well, meaning everyone wanted something else and something bigger and something this and that, but no, let's focus on the core, and we are kind of the gatekeepers of that at this point. And the result was just good, because people are using it, and they're using it, and they're getting benefits from it, and it doesn't touch the core vertical, basically, of what they're doing, what the company or the municipality is doing, but it contributes to that,
supporting the
work. There's a lot of processes in companies that can benefit from that, and it doesn't have to be Bubble app necessarily. It can be, like you said, Airtable, automating some processes. It can be a Notion document. It can be anything. But in this case, it was a success for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great example of, people are always kind of expecting the big startup that will become famous about using a no-code tool and things like that. But I think there is much more to say about all the small stories of this, like in France, in this digital transformation, there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of consultants that are selling stupid stuff with it. But this is what I believe in, it's like using digital tools yourself, so no-code tools usually, to gain in terms of to make life easier. Let's put it that way. Let's your work life easier. Let's life easier. And I really believe in that.
I think that's not the future, but it's one of the futures that we are also exploring at this point. Also, when we are through with the rebranding and we have more time to focus on those types of clients, there's a lot of need within even bigger organizations, not just to kind of test new avenues and use data in a way that we can maybe create a new product out of that, but also in support of main core processes that you can automate things and you can make things, you can make life easier. This is just one example, but there's a lot of that going on in companies, and a lot of small agitations and problems that are kind of been increasing for people and adding workload that's unnecessary. So I feel that people can be more productive with the right digital transformation solutions. They can be more productive. They can be more a more happy workforce, because in this case that person can go home early. They don't have to go back to the office, sit in traffic just to kind of hand in a piece of paper that their manager needs. It's just stupid. It's stupid to think that that's actually still going on, but it's going on a lot more than you may realize.
Definitely. Paper is still the best way of work for many people, for many, I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then the next step is to be a consultant and have them do it, right? Where you can empower people or organizations to expand on what they have on their own. Yeah, which is challenging, I have to say. So far, we have not been able to manage that really well with clients, because no code is simple, supposedly, but
depending on the tool. Also,
but you can still build a lot of complex stuff with it. So if your concept or your product is complex, then it doesn't matter if you build it in no code or whatever, it's still going to be complex. And that's that's something that people don't really seem to realize sometimes. Like, it's visual development. I mean, you just click and drag and point and click and whatever. It's easy. Yeah, it's easy. But if you build something complex, it's no longer easy.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's always good to remember that. Well, I think it's the perfect conclusion for this episode. Thank you so much, Vincent, for the time and for all those interesting things. And we will follow the adventure of Ideable and the future name. Do you want to?
Yeah, the new name would be Tinkso. Yeah, the idea of professional tinkering. The idea that we started out as just playing and tinkering, but we developed a professional way of doing that allows us to build stuff in a way that actually is performant and scalable. So the tink comes from there, and the so comes from basically the way to do it. Plus, I mean, in this day and age, finding a name that you can brand, register, that's the biggest challenge of anything. But Tinkso, that's the new name moving forward.
Perfect.
And thanks for coming over. It's fun to talk to people about something you're passionate about,
and to talk in person after a year of remote and things like that. No, I'm super happy that we had a chance to meet.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode until the end. Again, I found this conversation very inspiring, and I feel very connected to Vincent's and Matt's vision of running an agency. Leiden was unexpectedly very pretty. The weather really sucked though, and I quickly headed back to Amsterdam, where I spent 3 more days of biking around and meeting old friends. There's one thing above all that I like doing in Amsterdam, it's biking around at night, a little tipsy, and just enjoy the beauty of the city at night. With the water everywhere, it's really magical. To me, Amsterdam is the only city that can compete with Paris in terms of pure aesthetical enjoyment. But I don't know, I might be a bit biased too. I'm now heading to Cologne, where I'm going to specially meet my next guest, Lilith, who co-founded visualmakers.de. Don't hesitate to write me on Twitter, let me know what you thought about the episode. I'd love to have some feedbacks. Bye, and see you in the next episode.